Subject: ex-fiancé cheated with a professor at our college. I got revenge. Hey, true story, my name's Joe, and this is the first time I've ever written something like this out. I've been sitting on this story for a long time because, honestly, it's wild and part of me thought no one would even believe it. But after watching your channel for months and hearing story after story from men all around the world, I realized my story fits right in. Actually, it's worse than I ever expected it could be, because it wasn't just some random guy my ex-fiancée cheated with. It was one of her professors, a married professor, at our university. And yes, I got my revenge, and trust me, it was worth every ounce of patience it took. Let me rewind and start from the beginning so you understand how deep this betrayal cut and why I made sure to take both of them down properly. I met my ex-fiancée, let's just call her C, back in high school. We were both sophomores and we sat next to each other in biology class. She was one of those girls who always had the answers, always raised her hand, and for some reason that made me like her. She wasn't the popular cheerleader type, but she had this quiet confidence about her that drew people in. She wore her hair up in a messy bun most of the time, but when she actually let it down, every guy in the room noticed. I started talking to her more during group projects, and one thing led to another. By junior year, we were officially dating. I'll be real with you, true story. I thought I hit the jackpot. She was pretty, she was smart, she came from a good family, and she had big dreams of becoming some kind of researcher or professor someday. We were that couple everyone in school knew, the ones who were made for each other. Senior year rolled around, and we both applied to colleges. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I figured I'd study business because it was broad enough to keep my options open. C got into this university in Iowa with a strong anthropology program, and she wanted me to go there with her. At first, I wasn't sold on Iowa. It wasn't exactly my dream destination. But when you're 18 and in love, logic goes out the window. I said screw it, applied to the same school and got accepted. We promised each other we'd make it through the tough times of transitioning from high school to college. We talked about marriage, about our future kids, about everything. That's why I called her my fiancée. We were engaged before our freshman year even started. I thought that meant something. Fast forward to our junior year of college. By this point, we'd been together almost 6 years. We lived together off campus in an apartment, split rent, did grocery shopping together. The whole fake married life thing. For the most part, things seemed fine, but around the start of the fall semester, I noticed something shift in her. She started acting off. At first, I thought it was just stress. She was taking some advanced anthropology courses, and she kept talking about how demanding they were. But then, little things piled up. She stopped wanting to hang out as much. She'd claim she was studying late at the library. But when I'd offer to bring her food or coffee, she'd brush me off. She started keeping her phone closer to her, always face down, and suddenly she had a password on it when she never used to. I'd ask her if something was wrong, and she'd either say she was just tired or get defensive. Weeks went by like this, and my gut was screaming at me. I'd ask her straight up if there was another guy, and she'd laugh it off, saying, "Joe, seriously? I barely have time to sleep, let alone cheat on you." That calmed me for a bit, but deep down, I knew something wasn't adding up. One night, she fell asleep on the couch after a long day. Her phone buzzed a couple times, and normally, I wouldn't even think to check it. But I looked over and saw her phone screen light up with a group chat notification. I don't know what got into me, but something told me to grab it before the screen locked, and that's when my world fell apart. I scrolled through this group chat with her girlfriends and my stomach dropped. They were talking about how dangerous and exciting her fling was. One of her friends even said, "Girl, you're playing with fire, messing with a married professor. Imagine if his wife found out." I just froze. My brain couldn't even process it at first. Married professor? I kept scrolling and there it was, confirmation. They were openly talking about how she'd been sneaking around with her anthropology professor the entire semester. She'd been skipping study sessions with me to go meet him. She'd been lying to my face for months. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Here I was thinking this girl was my future wife, and she was hooking up with some married creep twice her age who was supposed to be her teacher. I didn't confront her right away. I don't know what came over me, but I went cold and calculated. Instead of blowing up, I decided I was going to burn both of them down. Over the next few weeks, I started gathering everything I could. Screenshots of her messages, photos she sent her friends, screenshots of the group chat, even receipts from nights she claimed she was studying but really wasn't. I went into full detective mode. I even borrowed a buddy's camera and followed her once when she said she was going to the library. Surprise, surprise. She met up with him at this little off-campus diner. I wasn't just collecting evidence for myself. I wanted to make sure I had enough to get him fired and her kicked out of the university. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was about principle. A married professor taking advantage of his student? Nah, that wasn't flying on my watch. For weeks, I pretended everything was fine. I acted normal around her, cooked her dinner, laughed at her jokes, all while building my case behind the scenes. She had no clue I knew. That was the hardest part. Every time she kissed me goodbye, I wanted to spit. Every time she said, "I love you," I wanted to scream in her face, "No, you don't." But I stayed quiet because I knew the payoff would be sweeter if I waited. By mid-semester, I had everything I needed. I scheduled a meeting with the dean of the college. I put together a file, screenshots, photos, timelines, everything. When I walked into that meeting, I felt like I was walking into court ready to win a case. And win, I did. The dean's face went pale as he flipped through my evidence. He couldn't deny it. There was no spinning this. A married professor was sleeping with his student, and it was all documented. I left that meeting knowing both of their worlds were about to implode. A week later, the dominoes started falling. The professor was suspended pending investigation. His wife filed for divorce not long after. And she didn't even try to fight it. She quietly withdrew from the university before they could officially expel her. And me, I didn't shed a tear. I packed her things, left them outside the apartment, and told her to pick them up while I was in class. She tried calling me a few times, but I never answered. She knew she was done. I still remember the day I walked into that meeting like it happened yesterday. It was a gray Thursday morning, the kind where the sky feels heavy and the air is cold enough to wake you up. I'd been up the night before organizing everything. Screenshots of texts, timestamps from her group chats, photos I'd taken of her and the professor meeting off campus, even notes I'd written for myself to keep the timeline straight. I had it all in a binder like I was presenting a legal case. When I walked into the dean's office, he looked surprised to see me carrying something that thick. I could tell right away he assumed I was just there to whine about a grade or complain about a professor being unfair. But as soon as I sat down and opened that binder, his face changed. I started with the texts. I showed him the group chat where C's friends were literally gossiping about her secret affair with this professor. I showed him the screenshots where she bragged about skipping my birthday dinner to go see him. I showed him the photos I took of them meeting up outside of class. The dean just sat there, flipping through page after page, and he kept adjusting his glasses like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. When he finally looked up, he just sighed and said, "Joe, this is serious." "No kidding," I told him. "That's why I'm here. I've been sitting on this for weeks, making sure I had proof before I came to you. This isn't just some rumor or suspicion. This is real, and it's been going on the entire semester." He asked me why I hadn't confronted the professor directly, and I told him flat out, "Because I wanted to make sure you couldn't sweep this under the rug." His face went red when I said that, and I could tell I hit a nerve. Universities love to protect their own until they can't. The dean promised me they would launch an internal investigation immediately. He said the professor would be placed on administrative leave while they looked into it. I nodded, closed the binder, and walked out of there feeling like I had just set off a bomb. The next week was surreal. My ex had no idea what I'd done. She thought she was still sneaking around under my nose, still playing me for a fool. But then whispers started around campus. Students were talking about how Professor H, the guy she was sleeping with, had been suspended. Nobody knew why, but rumors spread fast. I didn't say a word. I just watched. I'll never forget the night C came home from class looking like she'd seen a ghost. She was pale, shaky, and quiet. Normally, she'd walk in, drop her bag, and start chatting, but this time, she just sat down on the couch and stared at the floor. I asked her what was wrong, and she mumbled something about how one of her professors wasn't teaching anymore. I played dumb. I said, "Oh, really? That's weird. Do you know why?" She shook her head and said, "I don't know. Nobody knows." The thing is, she knew. She just didn't know how. By the time word got out that the professor was under investigation for inappropriate conduct with a student, I knew it was my moment. I packed up her stuff one afternoon while she was in class, set it all by the door, and left a note that said, "You don't get to come home here anymore. You know why. Pick up your things and leave." When she came back and saw it, she started crying immediately. She tried calling me over and over again, but I ignored it. She sent long texts begging me to talk, swearing she still loved me, saying she was confused, all the classic cheater excuses. I didn't reply once. I knew she'd figure out that I was the one who exposed her. And sure enough, a couple days later, she sent me one last text that just said, "Wow, you really ruined both of our lives." That was the last thing she ever said to me. It took about a month for the investigation to wrap up. In that time, the professor was basically a ghost. He wasn't in class, wasn't seen on campus, nothing. The rumor mill was going insane. Some people thought he was caught with drugs, others thought it was financial stuff. But then the official announcement came out in an email blast from the university. Professor H was terminated due to violations of faculty conduct and professional ethics. That was the sanitized version, of course, but I knew exactly what it meant, and so did C. The cherry on top. His wife divorced him not long after. Apparently, she found out through the investigation, too. Last I heard, she got the house, the kids, and a nice chunk of his pension. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. As for C, she didn't even wait to get officially expelled. She withdrew from the university quietly, like she was trying to slink out of town unnoticed. She packed her stuff, moved back to her parents' house, and that was it. No goodbye, no explanation, nothing. People on campus talked, of course. Word eventually got out that she was the student involved, and her name was basically mud after that. I don't know what she's doing now, and honestly, I don't care. All I know is that her dream of becoming some big-name anthropologist went up in flames because she couldn't keep her legs closed for a married professor. Now, here's the part that surprised me. I thought people would see me as the guy who exposed a predator and feel bad for me. Some did, sure, but a lot of people, especially in the anthropology department, treated me like I was the villain. There were professors who made snide comments in class. Stuff like, "Some students don't understand the importance of discretion," or "This department has been through enough without more drama." They never said my name, but I knew those comments were aimed at me. It was like I had broken some unspoken rule. Don't take down one of their own. I didn't care, though. Every time one of them gave me the side eye, I just sat back in my chair and thought, yeah, I did that, and I'd do it again. The rest of my time at the university was strange. On one hand, I was free. I wasn't tied down to a lying fiancé anymore. I didn't have to live with the constant paranoia of wondering where she was or what she was doing. I could focus on myself, my classes, and my future. On the other hand, I was walking around campus with a reputation. People whispered. Some admired me for exposing the truth. Others hated me for rocking the boat. But you know what? I came out of it stronger. I learned that sometimes doing the right thing isn't going to make you popular. Sometimes it makes you a target. But I'd rather be hated for standing up for myself than loved for staying silent. After my ex withdrew from the university and the professor was fired, life on campus became complicated. Like I said in my last email, a lot of professors in the anthropology department weren't happy with me. They saw me as the guy who got one of their own canned and put a dent in their program. I became a symbol of trouble. That made finishing out my degree awkward. I was in the business program, not anthropology, but word traveled. People love drama more than facts. I could feel the judgment when I walked into classrooms, like I was radioactive. Some classmates avoided me, some asked questions, and some actually respected me for standing up for myself. But I didn't care about being popular anymore. The whole situation had opened my eyes to how fake people can be. A lot of folks will smile to your face and then whisper about you the second you turn around, and I learned to keep my circle small. I finished my degree, worked my part-time job, lifted weights, and kept to myself. I'll tell you something. True story. I graduated that spring with a 3.6 GPA and a new sense of independence. But as I walked across that stage to grab my diploma, I didn't feel joy. I felt relief. Relief that this chapter of my life was over. Now here's where things got messy again. When you're engaged for years and then your fiancé cheats with a married professor, it screws with your head. Trust doesn't just snap back into place overnight. For a while, I told myself I'd never date seriously again. I'd just focus on me, maybe have some fun here and there, but never put myself in a position to be vulnerable like that. And I tried. After graduation, I started talking to girls casually. People I met at the gym, coworkers, friends of friends. But I noticed something in myself. I didn't trust anyone. Every time I'd see a girl texting, I'd think back to my ex hiding her phone. Every time someone told me they were busy, my mind immediately jumped to, yeah, busy with who? It was exhausting, man. I wanted to believe not every woman was like my ex, but my brain just wouldn't let me. I did have one semi-serious relationship about a year after college. Her name was Allison. She worked in accounting, smart, funny, had her life together. For a while, I thought maybe I was finally moving on, but little things set me off. Like, she once said she had to stay late at work to finish a project. Instead of just believing her, I drove by her office to check. She really was there, but I hated that I'd turned into that guy, the paranoid boyfriend. Eventually, Allison told me she couldn't deal with my lack of trust, and she was right. I wasn't ready. That breakup stung because it showed me how much baggage I was still carrying. On the professional side, though, things were going well. I landed a job with a logistics company in Iowa right after graduation. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid decent and gave me experience. I put my head down, worked hard, and climbed the ladder. Within a few years, I was managing a small team. Funny enough, my experience exposing the professor actually helped me in my career. Not directly, of course. I didn't exactly put "took down cheating professor" on my resume, but the skills I developed from gathering evidence, staying calm, and presenting my case translated into the real world. I learned how to be patient, how to plan things out, and how to stand my ground even when people didn't like me for it. Those traits made me a strong manager. People respected that I didn't play games. I was fair, but I didn't tolerate nonsense. I think part of me channeled all that betrayal into becoming someone who doesn't let himself get blindsided again, professionally or personally. Now here's a plot twist I didn't expect. About 3 years after graduation, I ran into C again. It was at a Walmart of all places. I was there to grab some groceries after work, and I turned down an aisle and boom, there she was, and she looked rough. Not like I just had a long day rough, but life has kicked me around rough. Her hair was greasy, her clothes looked cheap, and she had this hollow look in her eyes. We locked eyes, and I swear time froze. She gave me this small, awkward smile like she didn't know if I'd cuss her out or ignore her. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. But as I walked past, she muttered, "Hey, Joe." I stopped, turned, and just looked at her. And for the first time, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no nostalgia. Just nothing. She was a stranger to me. All I said was, "Take care of yourself," and walked away. That was the closure I didn't even know I needed. Over the years, I've had a lot of time to reflect on what that whole mess taught me. Here's what I figured out. Trust is earned, not given. Back in high school and college, I gave C my blind trust. I thought love meant never questioning her. But trust has to be built and maintained. Now I watch people's actions more than their words. Revenge isn't always petty. It can be justice. Some people told me I was wrong for exposing C and the professor. They said I should have just walked away. But if I had, that professor would have kept preying on students. Sometimes you have to take a stand, even if it makes you unpopular. Pain changes you, but it doesn't have to define you. For a long time, I let what happened control me. I pushed people away, doubted myself, and lived in bitterness. But eventually, I realized I didn't want to carry that weight forever. I had to let go, not for her sake, but for mine. I was running errands on a Saturday morning. I'd stopped at a small cafe near my apartment in Chicago to grab a coffee before heading to the grocery store. The place was busy, and while I was waiting in line, I noticed a woman looking at me like she recognized me. At first, I couldn't place her. Then she smiled and it clicked. It was C's younger sister, Emily. Back in high school and college, I knew Emily well enough. She was a couple years younger than us, the little sister who used to tag along when we hung out at C's parents' house. She was always friendly, a little shy but sharp. I hadn't seen her in probably 10 years. "Joe," she said, walking up to me. "Emily?" I replied, half shocked. We hugged, did the small talk thing, wow, it's been forever. What are you doing in Chicago? And all that. Turns out she had moved to the city a couple years ago for grad school and was now working as a social worker. We ended up grabbing a table and catching up for a bit. And of course, it didn't take long before C's name came up. I didn't bring her up, Emily did. She leaned back, gave me this half smile and said, C still talks about you all the time. I almost spit my coffee out. I hadn't thought about C in years, other than when telling my story here. I raised an eyebrow and said, "Really? What could she possibly have to say about me after all this time?" Emily sighed, kind of laughed, and said, "She tells people you're the one that got away. She says she made the biggest mistake of her life letting you go." I just sat there for a second, stunned. The girl who cheated on me with her married professor, who lied to me for months, who cried and blamed me for ruining both our lives, now sits around telling people I was the love of her life? You can't make this stuff up. I asked Emily why she thought she felt that way, and she said, "Because she knows you turned out fine, better than fine. You've got a career, you take care of yourself, and from what I can tell, you're happy. Well, let's just say she hasn't had the same luck." Apparently, after leaving the university, C bounced around from job to job. Tried going back to school a couple times, never finished. Got into a relationship with some guy who turned out to be controlling, and that ended badly. She's been living back in our hometown off and on, working retail, and never really found her footing. Meanwhile, she keeps telling Emily and anyone else who'll listen that I was the one stable, good thing in her life and that she ruined it I laughed, not to be mean, but just out of pure disbelief. 10 years ago, she was sneaking around with her professor like I was some boring safety net she had to escape. And now, a decade later, she's telling people I'm the one who got away. It's like she suddenly realized the grass wasn't greener. That professor didn't leave his wife for her. Her college career ended in flames, and all the exciting flings and bad choices she chased didn't pan out. Meanwhile, I built myself back up. I graduated, built a career, moved to a city I love, traveled, made new friends, and learned to stand on my own. Hearing that she talks about me all the time didn't stir up feelings of nostalgia. It didn't make me miss her. If anything, it just reinforced that I dodged a bullet. Now let me expand. Since moving to Chicago, I've been grinding hard at work. I started as a manager in supply chain, but recently I got promoted to regional operations director. That means more travel, more responsibility, and yes, more money. I'm not rolling in millions, but I'm comfortable. I've been able to take trips overseas. Went to Italy last year, and I'm planning Japan next spring. I've also gotten serious about fitness. Back in college, I lifted weights to blow off steam, but now it's part of my lifestyle. I'm in the gym 5 days a week, and I run 5Ks on the weekends. I've never been in better shape. People from high school wouldn't even recognize me. And socially, my circle is solid. I've got a few close friends who I trust, guys who've been through their own hardships and don't play games. We grill out in the summers, watch football, and travel together sometimes. No fake friendships, no shallow connections, just real, solid people. I know some people are going to want to know, what about my love life? Well, here's the thing. I date, but I'm not rushing into marriage. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm intentional. I've gone on dates with plenty of women since moving here, some casual, some that lasted a few months. I even had a longer relationship with a nurse named Rachel that lasted almost 2 years. She was a good person, and honestly, I thought we might go the distance, but ultimately, our goals didn't line up. She wanted kids immediately, and I wasn't ready to jump into that. We parted on good terms. The difference now is that I don't cling to relationships out of fear of being alone. I'm comfortable by myself. If the right woman comes along, great. If not, I'll keep building my life. So let's go back to what Emily told me, that C still talks about me, still says I'm the one that got away. Here's the irony. When we were young, I thought she was the one I couldn't live without. I thought losing her would ruin me. And when she betrayed me, for a while, I believed that. But the truth is, losing her is the best thing that ever happened to me. Because without that betrayal, I might have married her. I might have tied myself for life to someone who didn't respect me. I might have been dragged down by her choices. Instead, I was forced to rebuild myself. And in rebuilding, I became stronger, sharper, and more self-reliant than I ever would have been otherwise. And now, 10 years later, she's the one looking back with regret, while I'm the one looking forward with confidence. That's the ultimate reversal. Since you asked for a full picture, let me throw in some other highlights of my life the last few years. Family. My younger brother just got married last year, and I was his best man. Watching him marry a woman who genuinely respects and supports him was healing in a way. It showed me that healthy relationships do exist. Travel. I mentioned Italy earlier. Let me tell you, walking through Rome, eating pasta in little family-owned restaurants, seeing history up close, that was a life-changing experience. It made me realize how small my problems really are in the grand scheme of things. Hobbies. I've taken up photography. At first, it was just snapping pics on my phone during trips, but now I've got a real camera, and I even sell a few prints online. Funny enough, focusing on capturing beauty in the world helped me let go of bitterness from the past. Personal growth. I've also gotten into reading more, stuff on philosophy, psychology, history. One book that really hit me was Meditations. There's a line in there about how we don't control what happens to us, only how we respond. That's basically been my motto since college. Before I wrap up, let me circle back to that cafe conversation with Emily. After she told me C still talks about me, I asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Emily shrugged and said, "Because I think you deserve to know, and maybe because I wanted you to know that you weren't crazy. You really were the best thing that happened to her, and she knows it now." I thanked her for saying that, but I made it clear I didn't need validation from C anymore. That chapter is over. Emily nodded and said, "Good, because honestly, you're way out of her league now." We both laughed, and that was that. So, here's where I'll leave. True story. My ex-fiancé, who once betrayed me in the worst way possible, now sits around calling me the one that got away. Meanwhile, I've built a life I'm proud of, a career, friendships, health, and self-respect. The lesson: sometimes life gives you exactly what you need by taking away what you thought you wanted. And if C spends the rest of her life regretting her choices, that's her burden to carry, not mine. My only job is to keep moving forward. Thanks again for letting me share this journey. Writing these out has been a reminder of just how far I've come. Joe.